right, so here we are, Sonic Alchemy number 3. So we've been talking about, first we talked about fuzz, right? And I was saying how much I really like those germanium NKT 275 transistors. And then we went on to the Range Master. I don't have a Range Master, but I used Analog Man's Beano Boost, right? Same design, okay? So we discussed those, and we talked about how guitar players back in the 60s, used these things to make their Marshalls amps, break up, and so they could play rock and roll, right? And that became like the standard sound, over the decades since, right? But with the makers figured out different ways to do it. They got smart about it, so they figured out that they could make overdrives and distortions and pedals and things like that. And so today we're going to talk about boosting amps in general, using overdrives and things like that. So we're not going to talk so much about running into a clean amp with some kind of distortion box or overdrive or something. We're talking about like a nice crunchy sounding amp, okay? So back when my career started off in the 80s, we were using different things. Now, fuzzes and Range Masters were sort of gone already. Nobody was really interested in those things at that time in the 80s. What we were using back in those days is the first thing that I can recall is people were using the Ibanez tube screamers. And when I tried it out, it sounded really good. Now, you remember, they don't sound that great in a clean amp. There has to be into like a big, loud, blasting amp. So today we're going to try the tube screamer. Next, I brought some pedals that I really like that work the same way. And I think, they got hip to the Ibanez tube screamer, and a lot of manufacturers just jumped on it. They just made things that boosted amps. They're not like super heavy distortion. They're just like enough to get the amp like louder and have more sustain. So remember, we were using the tube screamer back in the 80s, but also, that's when the Rat came out and people were using that too. But you set them differently, and that's the trick. You don't put the gain all the way up, you put the volume all the way up, and then you sort of bring the gain up until you get the sound that you want. You get enough sustain. So when you boost an amp, most people, when you try to use a distortion box or an overdrive or something, they turn the gain up loud and the volume like in the middle, and that's for a clean amp. But when you use it as a booster, you want the volume all the way up, and you want the gain pretty low, okay? Because you want to use the natural gain and tone from the amp more so than anything, right? Now, some of these boosters have very specific sonic characteristics. Some of them don't. That's where you get that word, a clean boost, because it doesn't really shade the sound of the amp. It just adds a little bit of the gain that you need and a little bit of the volume you need, right? Now, some of the other ones have sort of a particular sound. The tube screamer has its own kind of sound, all right? So anyways, I'm going to start off with the tube screamer, okay? So here is my natural sound. It's already sort of gainy, right? So now I'm going to step on the tube screamer and see what happens. One more time. Without anything, with the tube screamer. Using this pickup, okay? Let's switch it over. Nothing. The tube screamer. Okay, so it's just enough to allow you to shred a little bit, right? So now the like I said, people got hip to that idea, and they started designing pedals around this concept where you have a nice, loud, sort of crunchy sounding amp, but you need like to add that last little, 4 or 5% to get over the top. So one of the ones that I really love, which is really probably, well, we can decide after we test them, but the one that I really like is the EP Booster by Exotic. Now, what does EP mean? That's Echoplex, because in the 70s, a lot of guitar players figured out that if you took that Echoplex, that tape delay, where that tape went around, it has a volume on it. If you turn the volume all the way up, it sort of had the same effect as boosting your amp. Now, back in the 80s, remember I said a lot of people use a tube screamer, some people used a Rat. I didn't use either. I used an EQ, like a 16-band EQ, which is weird, right? But if you boost those mid frequencies up for your solos and you put it on during your solos, it boosts it the same way. That's what I did. And people always sort of complimented me on my sound. So that's another way of doing it. But another way was the Echoplex, and they would just turn it up. So the Exotic makes a EP booster, and it emulates the sound. Now it's got a little bit of its own sound, like the Echoplex did. It's got like lower frequencies, and it sort of boosts it up in that area a little bit, and so it's a very distinctive sound. Okay, so, but I personally like it. All right. So, anyways, neck pickup. Here we are, guitar by itself with the EP booster on. I'll put on the bridge position pickup. Nothing. With the EP booster on. Okay, next up, we're trying the Exotic. They have another boost pedal called the Super Clean. Now this is, as the name suggests, this is a booster that doesn't really shade the tone of your amp and your guitar so much. It doesn't have like very particular frequencies that a booster doesn't boost, right? So it just sort of does its job in the bare bones minimum. Boosts the gain and the volume without shading your sound too much. So if you love the sound of your amp, but you just need more sustain and volume, this is a good choice. Okay, so once again, here's the Super Clean. No, this is the guitar without the Super Clean. Okay, with the Super Clean on. Here we go, bridge position pickup without the Super Clean. With it on. All right, so last up, I'm going to show you how you can just turn whatever you're using now into a booster, okay? So the other kind of pedals that aren't really designed as boosters, even though you can use them as such, are just like your normal pedals, right? So you can just, what you can do with this is the same thing. You just turn the volume all the way up and you gain down. So I'm doing that with the Exotic BB preamp, which I also love. This is the greatest pedal ever because no matter what kind of crappy amp I get, if I use this, it works out all right. So I always carry this around as an insurance policy. So generally when I go around, I got the EP booster and I keep the BB preamp. And then usually I'm going to be all right. Okay, so using the BB preamp, here we go. Remember, volume up, gain down, because this is a pretty gainy pedal. So neck pickup, here's the guitar. Here's the BB on. Right, bridge position pickup. With the BB on. All right, so here's the 4 pedals. So I'm going to demo them in a blues, okay? So I'll play all the choruses with these pedals and we'll see what we get.